Welcome back. This is the third and final video in the SQL lesson series. And in this video, you'll learn about relational commands that link database tables together. Remember that in a relational database, each item of data is stored once only. And we make links between tables so that we can use data from one table in another table. We do this by using the primary key from one table as a foreign key in another table. We do this in a one-to-many relationship. And to get the data, we use the foreign key to follow the link back and get the data we want from the other table. And SQL commands can be set up to do this. So, for example, the name of a product will be stored in the product table, and the name of a supplier will be stored in a separate supplier table. Product and supplier are different entities. They'll have different tables, and the name of the supplier that goes with a product will be stored in a separate table. How do we find the supplier that goes with that product? We look at the supplier code, and that will be added to the product as a foreign key. And then if we want to get the name of the supplier, we follow that key to the supplier table and get the data that we want. This is the most difficult aspect of SQL that we'll be following. If you get the idea, that's good enough. There will at most be 1 or 2 marks in the exam on this particular issue. However, if you're aiming for the highest grade, it's a good idea to get good at every aspect of SQL. So we'll look at the SQL commands that let us join tables together. There are different ways of joining in SQL, and the one that we're going to look at is called the inner join. That's the default, and it's the only one that will be in the exam. It finds records where there is an exact match between a foreign key and an ID of a primary key of another table. So the syntax for getting data from more than one table is the select command that we're familiar with. We give a list of columns, and they can be columns taken from more than one table. And then instead of saying from a table, we say from table 1, one of the tables, join table 2. And then in the end of the command, we give the word on, and then we give the 2 fields from the 2 tables. So table 1, a particular column, equals table 2, a particular column. So the foreign key in table 1 is the same as the primary key in table 2. Might sound a bit confusing. Let's have a look at an example. So in this example, we're selecting product name from the product table and supplier name, that's in the supplier table. And so the from command says from products join suppliers. So I'm selecting a field from products and a field from suppliers. So I've got to join the 2 tables together. And how do I do it? Well, that's because supplier ID in the products table is the same as supplier ID in the suppliers table. So I've linked them together with an on command. Notice that in this database, the 2 fields have the same name. They're just in different tables. So products.supplier ID, suppliers.supplier ID. The dot tells you what table the field belongs in. And in this case, they both have the same name. They're both called supplier ID. In some databases, they might have different names. We can also use the where command with a Boolean condition. And because we've joined the 2 tables, we could take that condition from either of the tables. So let's look at an example. This is the hardest of all the SQL commands that we'll do in all 3 lessons. So we're taking first name and last name, those are both employee attributes, from the employees table joined to the order table. We can join them because their employee ID in the orders table is equivalent to employee ID in the employees table. And we're going to find order number 10257. So what that command will do is find the order called 10257 and then link to the employees table and find the first and last name of the employee who's in charge of that order. You can imagine how that might be useful in a business context. Don't worry if you haven't got every single one of these join commands straight yet. You could pause the video now, try both of those, see how you get on, and on the next page I'll set you some further tasks. So here are some exercises where I'm not giving you the code, just have a go and see if you can make them work. Try to list, to produce an output which lists every order number plus the shipper of that order. We haven't used that table yet, but that is another table in the database, shipper, and list every product name and the category name that goes with that product, and that's taken from the categories table. And then just explore and try to find out about SQL. The commands that I've shown you are the only ones that will come up in the exam, but of course there are many more ways of using SQL. So if you're interested in it, follow the links that I've provided and learn as much as you want. Okay, so I'll be sending around some work to test how you've got on.